Right,
Anyway.
Hi everybody. We're here today and we're very lucky. We have, I don't even know how to introduce you, Dr. Charl. Remember, we all have our masks and we're socially distant. I'm allowed to not be socially distanced from him because we share the same bed. Okay. Right, okay, so how do we introduce you? Dr. Charl, emergency medicine specialist, and
That'll
you
do
know
just nice.
lots about everything where I know a little about everything and only about breast. So I was told last night at the dinner table, stick to my road. In other words, ask about and answer about what I know. So we're going to ask you about questions that I don't know that I know the answers to. Firstly, what's a vaccine?
Right, it's a good place to start. So vaccines are medicines. They've been around for a long, long time. In fact, we've had vaccines for longer than antibiotics.
Oh, wow.
The first vaccine was used to treat smallpox, and we've eradicated it. So vaccines are a medicine which is designed to boost or trigger a response in your body's immune system. So your immune system, there are only three ways to get protection against an infectious agent.
Yeah.
Okay, so infectious agents, viruses, bacteria, parasites, are all infectious agents. Only three ways to get protection. One, you get protection from your mother because she gives it to you when you're born, and you suck it out of her boob, and you get some protection
Breast health.
from
You know
mom.
what? Yeah.
Okay? Those are antibodies that
Yeah.
you get from breast milk and from circulating with mom's blood, right? Those protections might last or might not last, depends what mom had protection against, right? So that's natural immunity. Second way you can get protection is you can have the infection.
Okay.
So if you get measles from somebody else,
Yeah.
you're highly unlikely to get measles again because your body's going to respond to the measles virus and create a system of memory antibodies, which is quite a complicated system. It's not just one antibody. And then your body will remember that particular infection. The other way you can get protection is to send your immune system to gym. So if your
Just
immune
bring up
system
gym
goes to
again.
gym, then it does some training, and then it's strong enough to deal with some insult. And the only way to send your immune system to gym is to give it a vaccine. So the vaccine is a training program for your immune system.
So what's a live vaccine and what's a dead vaccine?
So they make vaccines in different ways. All vaccines have to convey a small piece of coded information. Think of it like a computer code. It's got to send a package of info to your immune system to tell your immune system what to build.
Okay.
Right? So you've got to give it a set of instructions. It's like you can't operate a video recorder without a set of instructions. You need a set of instructions to tell the immune system what to build. So all vaccines are a piece of code, right? Or a recipe. Okay, they're a recipe. And the way they carry that code is different depending on what technology we use to build the vaccine. So there are different types of vaccine technologies. The simplest way to build a vaccine, the most old-fashioned way, is to take the original virus or bacteria, because we make vaccines against some bacteria as well.
Like which ones?
Typhoid, cholera,
Oh.
tetanus. Those are all bacteria.
Tits that we have.
Hello, so that's a vaccine. It's a vaccine against a particular agent that you can train the immune system. Most of the vaccines are against viruses.
Okay.
So the virus can be put through a laboratory cleaning process, if you like. It's like we take a piece, we remember it, we grow a little piece, and we take another piece, we grow a little bit, and we remember it, and we do it again and again and again for years and years and years. So that's, for example, the Measles Vaccine was built from the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
And we're using the same piece of code that we originally had in the lab in the 1950s. Exactly the same piece of code is being built into measles vaccines. So you could take a piece of the virus, and therefore that type of technology is called an inactivated virus. Okay. It's a bit of a silly term because it makes people think that you're getting the whole virus and somehow it's just been polished off and then it goes into you. It's not that. It's a piece of code. So it's just enough of the recipe. We're not injecting the recipe book.
Okay.
We've just taken a page out and we've put in just the recipe for chocolate cake.
Okay.
and that's the only piece of code we need. So even though it's called an inactivated virus vaccine, like some of the influenza viruses are made that way, some of the hepatitis vaccines are made that way, even some of the coronavirus vaccines.
That we give to our kids, because one of the questions I'm going to ask you is about kids. So,
measles.
because we've all
simplest one to think about. So most of our kids, before you send a child to school, your school's going to ask the parent, show me the child's vaccine card.
Yes.
And then if you haven't vaccinated your kids, then there's a whole hoo-ha about whether your child can still go to school, ne?
Okay.
And then you get involved in all sorts of conversations, and actually at the end of the day, it's just easier to make sure your kids are vaccinated.
Because they're not going to go nutty and mad, they're nutty and mad anyway.
So the measles vaccine, like the mumps one, rubella, chickenpox, are commonly part of the childhood, what we call the extended program of immunization in the country. So kids all get them, okay? And why do they get them in kids? Well, because those are common diseases in childhood, right? So it makes more sense to protect children against measles and chickenpox, because they will be both sufferers and spreaders of the disease, right? Okay. So we've got other viruses that are more adult viruses, hepatitis, herpes, Ebola, okay? We've got a vaccine for Ebola. In fact, the J&J vaccine, I stand to be corrected, one of the vaccines currently, in fact I think it's J&J, the platform that the vaccine was built on was the same platform that we built the Ebola vaccine from. Okay. The technology, the clever people built it in the same way. Back to your question about inactivated viruses. So when you get a vaccine, like a flu vaccine or a measles vaccine, where there was so-called inactivated virus, because it's only a set of instructions, it's not the virus, it's physically impossible to get the infection from the vaccine. It's physically impossible. That there is the infectious particle was not put into you. Because
I have people who tell me that they went for the vaccine and then they got COVID.
So it's
and then
physically, there is no science. You stand more chance of flying to the moon in your Mini, okay? It is physically impossible to get the infection from any vaccine. So if you get a flu vaccine, whatever symptoms you might be getting afterwards, we'll talk about those just now, those symptoms are not influenza, okay? We can pull antibodies, we can look at your blood and confirm and prove to you that you are not suffering from influenza post the flu vaccine, right? So you can get a coronavirus or a vaccine that's effective against coronaviruses, plural, and you might have some symptoms. We'll talk about symptoms of vaccination. You are not suffering from coronavirus or COVID-19 because of the vaccine. You might catch COVID-19 separately, so you might still suffer from COVID-19, but it wasn't because of the vaccine.
So the vaccine doesn't stop you getting the virus?
No.
And why should
no
you
vaccine stops you getting a virus completely.
Okay.
So it's about levels of protection. So if you receive any vaccine, vaccines are more or less protective against a particular virus, depending on a couple of factors. The simplest factors are how stupid the virus is. Right? So some viruses are more stupid than others. It's not really a good term because viruses aren't freelance agents. They don't live in the environment by themselves. Bacteria can. Viruses can't. Viruses have to live in a host. Okay? They're not
an animal or people.
So a virus is, some people would even argue that a virus is not technically a living thing. Okay, but that gets quite philosophical. So the virus, in order to survive or replicate, which is its job, okay, it needs to move from cell to cell and from host person to person. If it's a people disease, it's got to go from person to person. Okay, and some viruses, many viruses, they operate by having camouflage. Okay, so viruses have a camouflage tactic which allows them to move around because there's only one enemy to a virus, and that's immune systems, right? So the virus has to figure out ways of dodging immune systems. Otherwise, it's a pretty useless virus. So the viruses, some viruses
like
change.
Smallpox must have been stupid.
Wasn't very clever virus, correct. Smallpox was only one, and its mutation ability or changeability was almost zip. And so the vaccine that was developed to treat smallpox always worked against smallpox. Okay, so eventually enough people were vaccinated and smallpox was eradicated completely. There were more vaccinated people than there was virus, so the virus had nowhere to live.
Okay.
So it became homeless. Right. Homeless virus, die. Right. So this the viruses that affect our modern world, influenza, coronaviruses, they've got quite clever camouflage. So they change. Different words we use, you get different types and subtypes of viruses. We use that for flu, right? We could talk about variants. Okay, that's what we use now for coronavirus. It's the same thing. It's just a different strain, if you like, of the same virus. So it's still a coronavirus. It's just got a different camouflage. When it's different enough, we call it a different variant. So the current variants are Alpha and Delta.
So 19 does it mean there were 18 before it?
COVID-19 is purely a name. Purely a name. We could have called it coffee, but we gave it the name COVID-19 to make it sound scary. I don't know why people give it, and also because it was first identified in 2019.
Oh, so it's not because there were 18 before it.
2019 was the year of identifying the virus, so they gave it the name COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay. And the CO part is because it's a coronavirus. There are other coronaviruses. There are quite a lot of coronaviruses on the planet. They've been circulating for 10s, 20 years. Yeah. The first coronavirus we identified was back in 2002 or 3, somewhere there-ish. SARS. Yeah. Okay. The first SARS, which was a respiratory virus. So it's a virus that causes a pneumonia, a respiratory infection, similar to flu. We had another one, MERS, okay, in the 2012, I'm sketchy on those dates, but it's about 10 years ago. Okay. That was the Middle East coronavirus, another one. And there's been lots of in-between ones, because one of the viruses that we know that causes a disease called the common cold is the coronavirus. Okay. That's why the symptoms of most people when they get coronavirus, it looks like you've got a cold.
So they could have been around hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Long time. It's unlikely that it's hundreds of years because we've been able to identify viruses for quite a long time. But certainly the coronavirus is 20 odd years old, at least. Okay. The coronavirus family, right? So these viruses change or mutate as part of a natural camouflage dodging exercise, and if they mutate enough, the first round of antibodies that your body developed to fight that virus or the vaccine might not work against that changed variant. So the easiest analogy is the flu vaccine. Start there because people are more comfortable with it. Flu's been around for plenty of years, right? Influenza virus, but it's a rapidly mutating virus. So every year, the labs around the world identify different strains. They're called strains, same as variants, okay, but flu talks about strains. They talk about strains of flu virus that they identify in Perth or London or Singapore or wherever, and the strain of flu is new enough so that we call it new flu or wild flu or virgin flu. It's a new flu. And even if you had a vaccine last season, it won't work against that strain because it's just too different. Your vaccine from last year, your flu vaccine...
That's why you vaccinate the family every year.
Exactly. Yeah. So your flu vaccine from last year will work against the common, it's usually 3 or 4, depending on the valency of the vaccine. It will work against the common flu strains that are in the world. Yeah. The new ones it can't work against, it can still help you not get serious disease. So it still gives your immune system's still been to gym, right? But you've just been doing push-ups instead of sit-ups. So you're still fit, your immune system's still strong, but you're not prepped for exactly that new strain. So, and the cycle time, how often does this virus change? More or less every year. So that's why we take flu vaccines annually to try and keep up. We're playing catch up. Okay. So the next question should be, okay, we're going to have to take another coronavirus vaccine. Yeah. Okay. We don't know yet, probably. Okay. So best guess is that the coronavirus will eventually settle into a season.
It's never going away.
It's never going away. The coronavirus is here. COVID-19 will always be part of the diseases that medical students learn about. They'll be put into the textbook, and you've now got another virus to learn about, and COVID-19 will be another disease to learn about. Yeah. Okay. And what will happen though is that we will be more and more effective against preventing COVID-19, the disease. Okay. Okay,
getting
because our
sick in
issue is not the
hospital.
coronavirus. Our issue is COVID-19. The world hasn't dealt with COVID-19 very well. Okay, because so many people got it at the same time, and the hospital systems of the world can't handle all the patients going to hospital at the same time.
Right.
Point one. And number two is no one's immune system was ready for this coronavirus.
So people won't take this vaccine because they say it's so new and it hasn't had a long time to check it out.
So that's a good criticism because things appeared in a big rush, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly we've got 3 vaccines, and actually there's more, there's plenty. There's 12, 13, 14, 15 coronavirus vaccines. I can't even remember the number, but it's a lot. In South Africa, we've only got 3 registered so far. Okay, there's 2 available, 3 registered already in South Africa, and there'll probably be more. The vaccines, number one, they have been in development for quite a long time. Okay, we just haven't heard about it. The coronavirus vaccines have been developed since the first SARS arrived. So they've been clever people working away in a laboratory on a vaccine for coronavirus for 20 years, not 1 or 2 years. Point one. Point two is the way vaccines are developed, the science that goes into it is incredibly expensive. So it takes some kind of economic incentive to push and pay for companies, the medical drug companies, to develop vaccines faster or slower.
So up until now, it wasn't really worth it.
Exactly.
Because we
up until now,
collapsed everything.
drug companies are businesses as well. So they develop medicines that they can sell. Right, that's a normal process. The fact that they're developing medicines that are good for our patients is a bonus, right? But they've got to develop things that they can sell. So 20 years ago, there was no urgency to developing the coronavirus vaccine. COVID-19 arrives, the world goes mad. Now there's proper urgency for COVID-19 vaccines. So a lot of governments and a lot of big companies pumped a lot of funding into developing. So the vaccines were developed quickly because of additional funding support. They also had to run, like always, very detailed trials, safety trials on vaccines. These are not experimental drugs. They've gone through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 safety trials. They have been tested to like the limit, all right? If you get a vaccine in a country like South Africa that has been approved by the SAPRA regulatory authorities, that is a perfectly safe vaccine. I would happily get 5 of them in 3 arms,
and
both in the butt, no problem.
Yes,
they are quite safe to
Charl, I'm going to
receive.
stop you there because I'm going to divide this into 3 segments.